Have you ever experienced this? A man walks away from you after you've given him everything. Your time, your affection, your vulnerability. Days pass, maybe weeks, and then something shifts. He finds himself drawn back to you, not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but because something about you lingers in his mind. Today I want to talk about why this happens. Why do some women remain unforgettable while others are easily forgotten? Many women believe that physical and emotional intimacy alone is enough to secure a man's devotion. But here's the truth. Attraction isn't just about what you give. It's about what you command after you've given. And this isn't about playing games or manipulating someone's feelings. It's about understanding the psychology of attraction and the deep-rooted instincts that drive human behavior. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that sometimes the more you give to someone, the less they seem to value it? It sounds counterintuitive, but I see this pattern all the time in my coaching practice. Here's what typically happens. You meet someone amazing. The connection is electric. You share intimate moments together, physically, emotionally, or both. And in that moment of vulnerability, something shifts inside you. You start to wonder, where is this going? Does he feel the same way? Will he still respect me? And that's when many women make a crucial mistake. They start seeking immediate reassurance. They text first. They analyze his responses. They try to gauge his level of interest. And all of this behavior comes from a place of insecurity, a fear of being forgotten or replaced. But here's what you need to understand about male psychology. Men don't process intimacy the same way women do. While women often see intimacy as a deepening of emotional bonds, men sometimes need space afterward to process their feelings. Let me share a quick example. I worked with a client named Laura who had been dating Sam for a few months. Everything seemed perfect. Laura gave her all emotionally and physically because she truly believed their connection would naturally lead to commitment. But after a few weeks, Sam became distant. He stopped texting as often, seemed distracted during conversations, and didn't make as much effort to see her. Laura panicked. She started overanalyzing every message, wondering what she'd done wrong. She reached out more, trying to reconnect, but the more she chased, the more distant Sam became. What went wrong? It wasn't that Sam lost interest overnight. The dynamic between them shifted. Laura believed intimacy should have sealed their bond, while Sam instinctively needed space to process his emotions. Instead of letting him come forward, Laura unknowingly pushed him further away by seeking constant reassurance. Here's a truth that might be hard to hear. Attraction grows in space, not in suffocation. Men are wired to value what they must work for. This is a fundamental psychological principle that has existed throughout history. When something is too available, it's taken for granted. When there's an element of uncertainty or mystery, the mind becomes preoccupied with it. Think about it like this. Imagine two books sitting on a shelf. One is free, available anytime, with no effort needed to take it. The other is a limited edition, rare, and requires effort to obtain. Which one do people naturally value more? The same applies to human relationships. When you create natural space after intimacy, not out of manipulation but out of self-respect, you activate a man's deep-seated instinct to pursue. Now, this doesn't mean ignoring him or playing childish games. It means shifting the focus back to yourself. It means not sitting around waiting for his next move. Instead, continue immersing yourself in your own life, your passions, and your goals. Make it clear through your actions that while you enjoy the connection, your world doesn't revolve around it. This approach does two powerful things. First, it forces him to feel your absence. When he reaches out and finds you genuinely busy, when he realizes you're not anxiously awaiting his attention, he begins to miss you. He starts wondering what you're doing, why you're not immediately available, and most importantly, whether he has fully won you over. That uncertainty fuels attraction. Second, and more importantly, it communicates your value. A woman who doesn't rush to seek validation is a woman who understands her worth. She's confident that she's enough, with or without his presence. That level of self-assurance is intoxicating. Let me tell you something crucial. Your self-worth is your greatest magnet. It's not your looks, your words, or even how much you care. It's the way you carry yourself, the way you value your own presence. Many women believe they need to prove their worth to a man after intimacy. They go out of their way to show how loyal, supportive, or loving they can be, hoping he'll see their value and stay. But this approach often backfires. The truth is, your value isn't something you need to prove. It's something you need to embody. So what do high-value women do differently? First, they don't chase validation. They don't anxiously wait for a man's call, text, or attention. They're not glued to their phones wondering if he'll reach out. Instead, they trust that if a man truly values them, he'll make an effort. Second, they remain engaged in their own lives. They have their own passions, interests, and social circles. They don't drop everything for a man. They understand that a relationship should be a complement to their life, not the center of it. Third, they set boundaries without fear. They don't accept less than they deserve just to keep a man around. They know that if someone can't meet their standards, they'd rather walk away than settle for less. I worked with a client named Rachel, who came to me after a painful breakup. She'd been with her ex for years, constantly compromising her needs and interests to keep him happy. When he left, she was devastated, not just because she loved him, but because she'd lost herself in the relationship. We worked on rebuilding her identity outside of any romantic connection. She went back to school, built her career, started traveling. She no longer obsessed over what men thought of her. Months later, her ex suddenly reached out. He saw her thriving, and suddenly he wanted to be part of her world again. But Rachel was no longer the same woman who once waited for him. She had grown into someone who knew her worth, and that made her even more desirable. This story isn't unique. Many women find that the moment they stop chasing, the moment they start choosing themselves, men start coming back. Not because they played games, but because they exuded a quiet confidence that men simply cannot resist. Why does this happen? Because self-worth is rare. In a world where many people seek external validation, a woman who is self-sufficient and emotionally secure stands out. Men don't fall for women who need them. They fall for women who choose them but don't rely on them for happiness. One of the most powerful qualities you can develop is emotional mastery. Many women let their emotions take control after intimacy. They overanalyze a man's every move, decode his texts, and sometimes even react preemptively out of fear of being abandoned, ignored, or undervalued. But here's the truth. Men are drawn to women who embody emotional stability and self-control. A woman who has mastered her emotions doesn't let anxiety dictate her actions. She doesn't spiral into self-doubt or demand immediate validation. Instead, she operates from a place of calm confidence, understanding that intimacy is not a guarantee of commitment, but an opportunity to observe, assess, and decide whether this man is truly worth her energy. This level of detachment isn't about being cold or distant. It's about maintaining personal power. Men live in a world of constant pressure. Career demands, financial responsibilities, unspoken expectations from society. The last thing they want is to feel emotionally trapped in a relationship that drains them. That's why a woman who is emotionally composed becomes a sanctuary. She's not easily shaken by uncertainty. She doesn't react impulsively to a delayed text or sudden shift in his mood. Instead, she holds her ground, showing that she's not dependent on his validation for her emotional well-being. Now, this doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending not to care. It means expressing emotions with intention, not desperation. When something bothers her, she communicates it with grace, not panic. When she's happy, she shares her joy freely, but doesn't depend on his response to sustain it. When he pulls away, she gives space rather than chasing after him. This kind of self-assurance makes a man respect her deeply. He sees that she's not like other women who crumble under uncertainty. Men often test women without even realizing it. They test to see if she remains composed when plans change, if she can handle distance without falling apart, if she trusts in herself enough not to seek constant reassurance. And the women who pass these tests, they're the ones who become unforgettable. After intimacy, many women fall into the trap of overcompensating. They text more, give more, and try harder to show how much they care. They believe that by proving their loyalty, they'll secure a man's affection. But the truth is, less is more. Nonchalance isn't about being indifferent or playing games. It's about having a deep-rooted sense of self-worth and understanding that you don't need to convince a man of your value. Think about this. The most captivating women in history, the ones that men chase, admire, and never forget, are not the ones who beg for love. They're the ones who carry themselves with quiet confidence. What does nonchalance look like? She doesn't flood his phone with messages after intimacy. She lets things unfold naturally. She doesn't disappear to manipulate him. She simply continues living her life as she always has. She doesn't panic if he doesn't respond immediately. She trusts that what's meant for her will come. Men are wired to pursue, to wonder, to feel challenged in a way that excites them. When a woman is too predictable, too available, too eager to please, she removes the very thing that fuels attraction, mystery. Imagine two women. One sends multiple texts after a date, checking in, over-explaining how much she enjoyed the night. The other simply says, "I had a great time," and carries on with her day. Which one do you think lingers in his mind longer? A woman who embraces nonchalance doesn't need to force a man to chase her. He will do it naturally because she carries herself in a way that makes him want to. Too often, women make the mistake of shifting their entire focus onto a man after intimacy. They start adjusting their schedule to fit his, waiting for his text, and unknowingly placing their emotional well-being in his hands. This kind of unconscious dependency creates pressure, and men can feel it. They may not be able to explain it, but they instinctively withdraw. Not because they don't care, but because something about the dynamic has changed. The most magnetic women are those who have their own direction, their own purpose, and their own life outside of any relationship. Men are naturally drawn to women who have something bigger than just love, whether it's a passion, a goal, or a sense of fulfillment that comes from within. Why does this work? When a man meets a woman who is self-sufficient, he realizes she isn't looking for him to complete her. She's already whole. She doesn't anxiously anticipate his next move. She doesn't rely on his attention for happiness. She doesn't make him the center of her universe. Instead, she keeps nurturing her career, her hobbies, her friendships, and most importantly, her relationship with herself. This self-containment is what keeps a man's interest alive, because when a man realizes that a woman's happiness isn't dependent on him, he starts to value her more. Think about it. A man is far more likely to chase the woman who is thriving without him than the woman who is waiting for him to decide if she's worthy of his time. I worked with a client named Emma who was in a relationship where she constantly made herself available, always accommodating her boyfriend's schedule and needs. Over time, she noticed that he started taking her for granted. She realized that she had slowly put her own goals and interests on hold for the sake of the relationship. So she decided to shift her energy back to herself. She started prioritizing her personal goals, taking time for her passions, and living her life as if her happiness didn't depend on his presence. The result? Her boyfriend suddenly became more attentive, more interested, and more engaged. He saw her in a new light, not as someone waiting for him, but as someone who had a full, rich life with or without him. Most people misunderstand gratitude in relationships. They assume that showing appreciation means forming an emotional attachment, that expressing warmth and kindness equates to expecting something in return. But a high-value woman understands something deeper. True gratitude is given freely, without the weight of expectation. And it's this paradox that makes a man feel an irresistible pull toward her. Why do men pull away after intimacy? Many women unknowingly create pressure after intimacy by treating the experience as a transaction. They assume that physical closeness should lead to deeper emotional commitment. When that commitment doesn't happen immediately, they feel disappointed or even resentful. Men sense this shift in energy. They might not be able to articulate it, but they feel it. They recognize when a woman is attaching expectations to them, and that unspoken demand for reassurance makes them withdraw. Contrast two women's approaches. Scenario 1. After an intimate moment, a woman begins subtly seeking validation. She asks where things are going, whether he sees a future, or why he hasn't texted yet. Even if her words are gentle, her energy signals that she's waiting for him to prove something. Scenario 2. After the same experience, another woman simply expresses gratitude. She acknowledges the moment, appreciates it, and then effortlessly continues living her life, engaged in her passions, friendships, and personal growth. She doesn't need reassurance because she already knows her worth. Which woman do you think a man feels a stronger pull toward? Gratitude, without attachment, creates emotional freedom. When a woman expresses appreciation without clinging to an outcome, she sends a message that she is whole on her own. She doesn't use gratitude as a tool to manipulate or secure commitment. She simply acknowledges the experience for what it was and lets it flow naturally. This relaxed confidence does two powerful things. 1, it disarms a man. He expects pressure, but instead finds peace. 2, it makes a woman unforgettable because she doesn't behave like every other woman who is anxiously waiting for more. When a man sees that a woman can share deep moments without losing herself in them, he will return, not because she demanded it, but because he simply cannot stay away. A woman who commands a man's respect and admiration doesn't chase, she chooses. She isn't the one waiting by the phone, analyzing his every move or molding herself into what she thinks he wants. Instead, she operates from a place of abundance, knowing that she is the one who decides whether a man is worthy of her energy, time, and affection. After deep emotional connection, many women unconsciously slip into a scarcity mindset. They believe that because they've shared something personal, they must now secure the man's commitment. They start over-pursuing, over-explaining, or trying to prove that they're worthy of love. But here's the truth. The moment a woman starts chasing a man, she begins losing her power. Men are wired to pursue. It's in their nature. The more a woman leans back, standing firm in her value, the more a man feels compelled to move toward her. What does the queen's mindset look like? 1, she doesn't beg for attention. She never convinces a man to see her worth. She doesn't lower her standards out of fear that he will leave. 2, she trusts that the right man will recognize her value without her having to prove it. If he doesn't, she walks away not as a tactic, but because she genuinely values herself. 3, she remains the center of her own universe. She doesn't make a relationship the sole focus of her life. Love must align with her self-worth, not define it. When a man realizes that a woman isn't afraid to lose him, he begins to see her differently. She becomes a challenge, not because she plays games, but because she knows her worth. He understands that he must step up to be part of her world. The secret to being unforgettable isn't about clinging tighter. It's about knowing when to let go. It's about understanding that attraction is fueled by mystery, self-sufficiency, and emotional mastery. The most magnetic women give love freely, but don't attach expectations. Allow space for a man to miss them. Stay grounded in their own lives, passions, and happiness. And that's why men always return to these women, not because they need to, but because they want to. If you take one lesson from this, let it be this. You are the prize. The moment you stop chasing and start choosing, you'll see a shift, not just in your relationships, but in your entire life. Because a woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She doesn't beg for love, nor does she fear losing a man. She understands that her value isn't determined by a man's attention, but by her own self-respect. And when you truly embody this truth, you become absolutely unforgettable.